And we're live. Hi, welcome everybody to this week's episode of Wicked Connected. Our episode today is called The ROI of Networking, a Financial Executive's Perspective. Really excited to welcome Mike Earley here today. He's going to be talking about ROI from networking. So welcome, Mike. Thanks for joining us. And I think the first question we ask every single week, which was tell us about a networking event that you've been to recently that was really fun.
Well, first, thank you for having me.
Yeah.
This is great. I love the name Wicked Connected. It's a great name for a podcast in the Boston area. So one of the most recent networking events that I've been to was the MIT Sloan CFO Summit.
Oh yeah.
That's held every year, and it's a great combination of just a great lineup of speakers and information, and just full of finance executives. There are other folks in the room too, but it's a great networking event, and you always get a lot of learning out of it. And I'm always impressed with not only the speakers but the topics that they have at that event. One in particular that is very, I guess, cutting edge now is AI, and just AI in the workplace, and things like just having a workplace policy, et cetera, et cetera. So those are always events where you can learn.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Awesome. Hey, Mike, can you tell us a little bit? So you work with Bridgepoint Consulting. Would love to hear a little bit about your business and what you do there before we dive into asking you questions about networking.
Yeah, for sure. Bridgepoint Consulting is a consulting firm based out of Austin, Texas. We also have a Boston office, and we have a range of financial consulting services from the CFO level down, controller, et cetera, as well as we have implementation services for things like NetSuite implementation, et cetera. Our primary focus is private equity, middle market companies.
Awesome. I think I'll sort of kick off the networking questions, but we often like to ask people, how did you where in your life did you get started networking? I mean, for me, it was like very much more recently than maybe it probably should have been, but would love to hear, like, when did you start networking?
Yeah, I'd say it was middle of my career. And it was really a mentor of mine at one of my companies. He was my CFO at that point. I was a VP of finance. And he put a lot of focus on networking and just, to go and meet folks, build out your career, and build a team around you that can help you along your way. And so he was instrumental in getting me out networking. And at that point it was, hey, just say hello to someone. Then when you have a networking, have a coffee with them, whatnot, ask for one or two people in their network that you can meet and learn about them, et cetera.
Now, is that going to different events for your first time early on, or was it mainly just reaching out to cold prospects or just people in general and just wanting to learn more about their role in their business with not much really in return, just to have the conversation?
Yeah, it started off with events. So introducing me to folks in the audit space, or the financial audit space, and some of the big four, they would have events. And it was easier for me to go to an event with someone that I might have worked with or that I knew, to start networking, because the first time you do it, it can be a little intimidating. You may walk into a room where you don't know many people, and they're already kind of in groups, huddled and having conversations, and you want to break into that group to say hello, and everyone's there to network, so they make you feel comfortable, but it doesn't feel natural at the beginning. So that's kind of how I got started. And I've been to so many different networking, not just events, but the events are great because you can hit an event with, maybe some speakers and some information and a lot of people there where you can network. And the other part of networking is the one-on-ones, which I really like. I like the one-on-one in-person coffee meetings. So you can start to really build a tighter relationship that, I've had a lot of those kind of coffee meetings evolve into really good friendships over time.
Absolutely.
I think that's one of the hidden ROIs of networking is, we all go into it looking for some sort of business relationship, but obviously, naturally, if you're doing businesses with someone for long enough, chances are you're going to become friends with them as well. So it's just a really great way to build friends. And especially if you're going, if someone moves to a new area, I think that's always a really great way for them to open doors. Has there been any events, you go to coffees, like we talk about our favorite types of events. Besides a coffee, what would you say the structure of an ideal networking event would look like for you?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I like the smaller events that have a structure where there's maybe a panel of speakers, but with cadence that you have breaks throughout where you can meet folks, and then you come back and it maybe is a different topic. And so for me, the power of networking is obviously the relationships and building those with folks that over time you can trust, and you kind of building a team of folks that you can rely on, especially from a CFO standpoint, that if I'm in an organization and I need some legal help, right, I may know someone in my network that can help us with legal or HR, whatever it might be. So it's the relationships, but it's also, learning about those folks and learning about what's happening in their markets and what's happening in their organizations that you can take and maybe, take some best practices and bring them to your organization. So the power, think about more of a power of our ROI, like I said, the AI or just even the having a policy in the workplace. I went to 2 events within a couple of weeks, and that was the topic at both events. So there you start to learn, okay, what is the common thread between, some of these events and what is really on top of mind for folks, and what can I take back to an organization of mine, or even a client of Bridgepoint's if they need the help. Staying fresh on that information is important.
So, Mike, you talked about how a mentor sort of got you into networking. What kind of mentoring advice do you sort of offer to more junior folks in terms of like how are they going, how to get them started and get them over that fear of networking?
Yeah, that's another good question, because as you move about your career and, maybe you started networking and now you're at the point where you've done it so many times that you can share that, with someone who's kind of up and coming through the ranks. I think the first piece of advice I would give is when you go to an event, just keep in mind everyone's there for the same type of reason, right? They're there to socialize. Yeah. So as intimidating as it might be when you walk in, it is pretty welcoming, and you start to get the rhythm of, walking around to the different groups in the room, and you kind of can get a lead in. You start to get your own lead in as to, hi, how are you? My name is Mike, et cetera. And you kind of, once you have that down, it becomes easier and easier. So my advice would be, if it feels uncomfortable, don't let that stop you, because everyone else is there and they'll make you feel welcome. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we often joke there's 8 billion other people to talk to if you screw up one conversation.
And I know Mike and I were talking about this when we chatted on Friday, just about networking is actually a great place when you're uncomfortable, because everyone else is uncomfortable. And in a normal setting, if you walk into a room full of people that you don't know, sorry, Jeff. Hi, pup. But if you walk into a room of people you don't know, normally it's scary. You're like, wow, what do I do? Who do I talk to? And if you were just to walk up to a group of people, they might be like, why are you talking to me? Like, I don't know you. But in a networking setting, that's what everyone's there for. So you walk up to a circle of 5 people and you're like, hi, can I join your circle? Every single person's like, absolutely. What do you do? This is what we were just talking about. And it's a different set of social standards that makes it so much less scary.
I was going to say, on that note, and Mike, you mentioned this earlier, that your first time, going into networking events, all these groups are kind of huddled together. It builds up this confidence to yourself, right? Over time, being more comfortable going up to strangers and talking about yourself, learning how to listen as well and what they have to say. And I think that naturally coincides with how you over time start selling yourself and selling your company. You start building this confidence that really transfers, which is nice. On that note, I was curious, Mike, throughout your positions and employment, is there any type of strategy you take with networking. I mean, because you have your role, and you have your own responsibilities within that, but then acquiring maybe new clients or industry knowledge similar to AI, like, is there, a method to your madness, if you will, on, what do you go to for networking events? What organizations are you a part of and why? Splitting up your time, especially with a family, like, is there any type of maneuvering you do in that regards?
Yeah, it's really just time management. I mean, you can't go to all of them, right? So you try to choose the ones that you can make. And I don't have a strategy per se. What I like to do is try to find the ones that I can maybe add some value to, right? If someone needs a CFO's perspective or a finance executive's perspective, I can add that to the team. And then the other thing I look for is what can I learn? So I'm giving and taking, right? So what can I learn too? And what generally happens is I'll find a networking group that's maybe a legal attorney networking group, and then there's another one I belong to that's an insurance kind of flavor. And what I'm finding is there I can connect folks between the groups. Even just last week there were two connections that I could help make with a friend that needed someone to manage their cloud environment and another friend that needed an attorney for a certain venture that they're taking on. And that was great. It's a great feeling to be able to make those connections. If someone reaches out to you and says, hey, do you know anyone that can help me? And that's just through networking, right? It's so it's a lot. I think it's more kind of give than it is take, to be honest with you, when you go to these networking events. And I like to go to learn, learn about the markets, what's happening, what do the M&A lawyers see for venture and private equity versus what do the banks, what are the bankers seeing, et cetera. So, and you can start to learn the different perspectives, and when they're all kind of aligned, it makes sense that okay, this is the direction that it's likely headed in, so we can start to prepare our organizations or our clients for what might be coming.
So to add to the conversation, again, just back to the AI events you said that you went to two in the same week of a similar topic, you can then have that conversation with people that you're networking, with at that next event, saying, hey, I just went to this one. Maybe they did too. Compare notes. And then that's thought leadership, right? Like you're adding to the conversation, which, I think that's really enticing. And it's not, you're giving something that's just so natural. Go ahead, Jeff. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I was just going to jump in and ask sort of the opposite question of what we've been asking, which is what are the biggest networking mistakes you see?
Yeah, I the first one that comes to mind is just starting too late in your career. I didn't learn this in school, right? There wasn't a course that I remember taking on networking or when even you start your career in the world, it's not something that's in front of you, right? Until you have a mentor that has done it and says, hey, you should try this. So it's tough to identify it right early in your career because you're starting your career, right? You're really focused on getting to that next level or whatever it might be. If I could have started early, I would have. But I would say, maybe this should be somewhere in a course, especially if it's a business school or a business, if you're taking an MBA course, should be introduced there because it is extremely powerful, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you say that because I think back to my experience getting an MBA, and there absolutely was an expectation that we were networking. But there wasn't really ever any sort of explanation of like, how do you go about doing this? And so what you end up with is a lot of sort of trial and error. And so you end up with people who are basically hanging back too much and not jumping into a conversation, afraid to say anything, afraid to break into a conversation. And you sometimes see these, these sort of folks, at networking events, the person that's just kind of like standing there off by the side, kind of looking around. And I don't know. I love to. That's always like my first thing. I'm like, I'm gonna go talk to that person. Just make their day, whatever. I don't know whatever it is. But the flip side of it is is when you get the people who just come and like, hey, do you have a job for me? Or you just jump straight into their sales pitch. I don't know, that's where I you kind of see both of those sides, I think.
Yeah. The lack of active listening where you say what you do and someone's like, oh, okay. And I had this happen a couple months ago where I was explaining that my company is 100% virtual. And they said, I'd love to come in and talk to you about my product. I'm like, did you not just hear? Like we don't have an office. I just said that. But so it's really, I think, part of networking is truly actively listening to the conversations as well. Are there any questions that you like to ask people at networking events? I always feel like we get interesting answers when people talk about this.
Yeah, one of the first questions I like to ask is what they're seeing in their market.
I like
how does business look for them? Because all of us have a different perception on where the market's going, right? Especially earlier this year, right? We had, prior to September was, what's going to happen with interest rates? What's going to happen with the election, right? So, to get different perspectives, and then if you kind of take a mental note, then after we're past those points, you start to think about, what folks were thinking. Did it really, materialize? And I think, now from what I'm hearing is 2025 is going to be a fairly good year for venture and private equity, and there's going to be good activity, and everyone's has a good outlook. So that's great. So we'll see, like in June, we'll see kind of where we are, right? First half of the year.
Yeah. And I think that's a great idea too, because it gives you an excuse to follow up. Say someone gave you a market insight that was spot on, and 2 months later you see it kind of transpire. It's a good point to kind of reach back out and be like, hey, I remember that conversation we had. You were totally right. Like, let's grab coffee. I'd love to hear more about kind of your thoughts on the market or your thoughts on your industry.
Exactly.
So you mentioned something, Mike, that I'm really fascinated about, because it does seem like there's been a lot of kind of sideline behavior from the VCs and so forth, at least in certain sectors, of people just sort of very hesitant to, sort of put money into new investments, new startups, et cetera. And I'd be interested to see, do you have any thoughts on, like, how do people sort of manage that transition from, if we are going to see more money coming into the market, like, how do you as a startup or whatever who's looking for funding, how do you sort of work that, because it's like people are still hesitant. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's kind of my question for you.
So it really comes back to, being in the market, being immersed in the flow of information and networking. It really is. So if you're networking, maybe if you're trying to figure out, if you need to raise capital, maybe you're going to a network where there's a lot of bankers, right? Or if you're looking for debt, or maybe you're looking to get into a network where there might be some equity partners, and then just try to learn about how they're seeing the market, and that will help you navigate. And they'll tell you too, like if you have a good banker, they'll tell you kind of what's kind of up and coming, and how they're thinking about the market, how they're thinking maybe about how rates will move, and they generally know, how valuations are looking in the markets from the equity partners. So it's good to try to speak to as many people as possible, and then as you're kind of taking that information, maybe give kind of what your perspective is and what you're looking to do, right? Because there's probably another company that's looking to do something similar.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's sort of a fascinating, I think, idea of, like, you just have to stay in it no matter what, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it probably has been fairly discouraging, recently, because people feel like, well, what is this doing for me? But my guess is the people who have stuck with it are going to be better positioned when the money starts flowing more and so forth. So
I'm interested, Mike, on, the different events conversations. Have you had like a monumental win or just a kind of a standout situation, whether it be earlier on or semi-recently, with going to a networking event?
A monumental win.
Or just a good, it doesn't have to be one. That was, wow, what a setup. But just something that, something good came from it, or it's very memorable.
I think what I kind of maybe described a couple of weeks ago, what comes out of it is good is being able to connect folks. When you see two folks that have a need, or they can benefit from knowing each other, that's always great. And that's kind of where the give back is. If you go to an event, you learn something, or you learn that someone can help you maybe in the future, but you're not really ever going to take, right? You should, in my opinion, you should go to learn and meet people, and build the team around you, so that if you ever come across something that they could be helpful on, or you could connect them to someone, you have a team that you can trust. And it really is it's just like any team sport, right? You're building folks around you that to do things well, that maybe, if I'm not a lawyer, then I want a team with maybe some attorneys on it that have different flavors, and they attack different areas of law, right? So, and it might be a tax advisor, because I'm not a tax advisor on the finance side, or an audit partner, right? Just having a great network, and think about it as a team, so that when you have a play to call, and you can put the right person in to run that play, and help you out, or help your organization, that's great. And then you give back by just making those connections to help each other out, and help the network. And then lastly, I mean, Jeff, what you said is right on. If you can help someone who's just starting their networking, when you're at the networking event and you see that person that might, you identify maybe a little bit uncomfortable, or you haven't seen them before, help them by making it comfortable. Yeah,
Absolutely.
It's funny though. Actually, this happened at an event a couple weeks ago. I was at an event, and I saw this guy. He's kind of hanging off to the side and whatever. I just went over and I was like, "Hey, like I was just giving him some ideas and chatting with him. Then I brought him over to introduce somebody, whatever. And I get back to home, and I have my stack of, like, my goal is always like you sort of keep myself like going. I'm like, I gotta hand out like this whole stack of business cards or whatever. That's how I'm like, that's when I can stop, whatever. And I end up coming back with a big stack of business cards, and I got this guy's business card. His name's not on it. His email's not on it. All I've got is a phone number for his company. And I'm thinking, man, like I want to be helpful. It's like, you're not helping me be helpful. Like, but I don't know. It's actually happened to me quite a few times where I get a card from somebody that doesn't have their name on it. And I'm like,
wow.
I don't know what to do with this.
I've gotten a card with the wrong email on it before, and I figured, so I emailed them and it bounced back. I figured it out, but it was like a good way to reach back out and be like, "Hey, did you realize that your email on your business card is wrong?" And they're like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." But it's always a funny story when you have something like that happen.
Yeah,
this is why LinkedIn, I'm all about it. If you have a profile, it's just a nice way to stay connected.
Absolutely.
I agree.
Now, I know we're kind of coming up on time here, so I just want to be cognizant about that. And I'm looking. All right, thank you, Mike. I guess that was the echo I was hearing. But one of the last things we like to ask is, I know the holiday season's coming up, but do you have any exciting networking events that you're looking at attending if not by the end of the year, maybe in the new year?
Yeah, it's one that I've been to in the past. It's put on by FEI, and it's the KeyBank Economic Outlook. It's coming up in January. I'm hoping to be able to attend that one again. It's a good one. It's about interest rates, financial markets. Where are things headed, or from the experts, right? Where they think things are headed. So that's always a good one that I'm looking forward to.
I love FEI events, so you're speaking my language. I will probably see you there. I guess, Jeff or Taylor, do you want to go next?
I'll jump in. I am going tomorrow, so I am part of a small networking group in the Charles River Chamber of Commerce, and so there is actually an event tomorrow. Tomorrow morning, for people who are interested in all of the different small networking groups in the chamber to go show up and meet those groups. And so I'm going to sort of be, sort of support my group and talk to people. But I don't know, that's been really, it's been nice to have one of those, sort of smaller groups, like obviously like in the chamber, you get to talk to lots of people and go to lots of events, but it's also nice to have a group that we meet twice a month. And so there's just a nice group of people that we've kind of, got to know. And it's really, I think it's really valuable because, like when I go to other chamber events, I see people that I know and I can walk over and, say hey to them and meet whoever they're talking to. It just adds that layer of, sort of another reason to break in and have a conversation with people. So that's my main event, I guess, for this week, at sort of winding down as we get closer to.
I know. That's why I was like, maybe if you don't have
nothing.
An event by the end of the year, we have basically one more weekend. If you're going to an event next week, you are way more dedicated than anyone else I know.
Oh yeah, Jeff, I feel like that's really utilizing though a networking event or networking group.
Yeah.
Because, to your point, like being a part of an organization, like the Boston Chamber, Charles, whatever it might be, it's there's a lot of people, which is a great thing. There's so many different topics and events, which is a great thing, but being able to form very tight relationships with a few, and it just keeps growing. That's, I think, the magic in the recipe of being part of these things. I do something very similar with Crew, where we, gotten some women over the time, and we'll connect, once a month, twice a month, depending on the weather and what we want to do. But it's not even for networking. It's just kind of like enjoying each other's time and getting to know each other more, which is really nice. On that note, I'll go next so Amelia doesn't steal mine. But I have only in-person lunches and coffees this week and nothing next week. Come January, the first week of January, I'll have a lot more events going on, but we are doing a Wicked Connected dinner tomorrow. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yes.
And I have yet to meet Taylor live and in person, so it's very.
Wait, really? Oh my god!
Which is wild. I wasn't able to go to any of the venture cafes because of traveling and other events. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
And this is the power of networking in a virtual world too, is that, I feel like we're all friends, and, you two haven't even met in person yet. It's like old time friends. So I'm definitely excited about our event tomorrow, but I also am going to be co-hosting Third Thursday. So Supporting Strategies has been a long time sponsor of the event. So it's literally the third Thursday of every month. And we bring together service providers, founders. We have a really good group of people that come. So I'm excited to, I always have fun. It's like one of my favorite events every month to go to. So I'm really excited about that. And before we hit stop record, I forgot to ask Mike, how is the best way to get in contact with you for all the people who want to listen to this podcast and want to get to know you more?
Yeah, I think LinkedIn is definitely the best way. Shoot me a note on LinkedIn. Yeah.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone, and we will see you next week.
Yep. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Mike.
Well,
all right.
Yeah.
Bye.